As everyone's coming into the room, we are going to get started in just a minute. And for everyone's awareness, we will be recording this call. And if anyone is streaming the call live, because we've seen that happen occasionally, we ask that you show the image at full screen so that the call ID doesn't show. We're going to give it just another moment to see if anyone else comes into the Zoom call. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's a little bit after 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Melanie Parra, Chief Spokesperson for University of Colorado Boulder, and I'll be moderating today's call. And some quick housekeeping items before we get started. All attendee lines will be muted throughout the call. And when we get to Q&A, place your question in the Q&A function, or you can raise your hand if you'd like, since we have this not in the webinar setting, but we have the regular Zoom session setting. So you can raise your hand and I'll call on you for questions. And for those who are on the phone, I'll make sure, if you're not able to raise your hand, I'll make sure to leave some time for anyone on the phone to be able to ask a question. And the call will be recorded. So if you do need a copy of the recording, you can reach out to us at cunews@colorado.edu. And we'll do our best to get to all of the questions. And if there are any follow-ups, you know how to reach us, cunews@colorado.edu. And we'll do our best to get back to you as quick as we can, depending on how many questions come in. We always try to get back the same day if we can. So on today's call, we have Phil DeStefano, Chancellor of CU Boulder, Russell Moore, CU Boulder's Provost, and Pat O'Rourke, Interim Executive, Vice Chancellor, and Chief Operating Officer. And we're going to get started first with Chancellor DeStefano for some opening comments.
Thank you, Melanie, and good afternoon to everyone. Today, what we're going to do is announce our plans for the spring 2021 semester. Our classes will begin on Thursday, January 14th, with in-person, hybrid, and remote courses. And there will be key updates to our learning and our on-campus experience, drawing upon lessons that we learned this semester. Instead of spring vacation for this coming year, we're starting the semester 3 days later than originally planned and offering wellness days, one in February and one in March. And this is an approach that many universities are taking to prevent the potential for travel-related spread of COVID-19. Opting out of spring vacation was a difficult decision. However, that decision was made keeping in mind the health and safety of our students, of our faculty, and of our staff. And we also made this decision in very close contact with our partnership with Boulder County Public Health. At CU Boulder, we're still offering a world-class education in one of the best college towns in America, with housing and dining options and access to extensive COVID-19 testing. And we believe that the decisions we've made for next semester will improve the educational experience on campus for our students, for our faculty, and for our staff. We'll provide the educational, social, and health and wellness support that's needed for a successful spring semester. We will have key updates on our websites, from dates to instruction changes, to programming, and to public health guidelines. And I'll just quickly mention a few so that we can go on to the questions for today. Like every university in the country, we know that we can't deliver the full traditional college experience that everyone wants, but we've worked to make it engaging, safe, valuable, and fun as possible. And we're doing our best to be more consistent in our modes of instruction with greater flexibility for our faculty and for our students. We will have better dining options for our students and social activities, including options for individuals to reserve in-person dining. Obviously, the size of the groups that will be able to dine together will really be determined to local public health requirements and very dependent upon maintaining our low rate of COVID-19 infections. And we'll have more resources for isolation support. One thing that I do want to note that I feel is extremely important is that we're going to be committing $1.8 million to expand our mental health services for our undergraduate and our graduate students. And we're expanding testing for next semester. This semester, we added 600 monitoring tests a day that are available to students, faculty, and staff. And these students, of course, are those that live off campus. That's in addition to what we've been doing since the beginning of the semester, when we put in place monitoring of all of our on-campus students. And we'll continue to lay out details about our public health expectations and be as transparent as possible as we make decisions. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. It's more important that we engage directly and often during these difficult times and be as transparent as possible. And so now I'll turn it back to Melanie for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. So we'll move into questions from our attendees today. We have the raise hand function for participants. So if you could please use that to raise your hand and I will call on you. You can also use the chat function if you prefer. And for those who have called in, I will periodically allow time to answer your questions as well. When you're called on, please introduce yourself and your news organization and let us know your question. So with that, we will take the first question. Katie Langford.
Hi, it's Katie from the Daily Camera. Chancellor DeStefano, could you talk more about what that investment, that $1.8 million investment will be into? Do you have specifics around services and things like that?
The key thing, Katie, is that to add additional counselors for health and wellness, as we've seen our numbers increase as most universities around the country in the area of health and wellness, we want to make sure that we have additional counselors available to work with our students. So that will be one way that we will use that $1.8 million. And I'll also ask Russ and Pat if they want to add to that.
So I can provide a little more detail, Katie. What those funds are intended to do is to hire counselors that would be embedded in some of the schools for the graduate students. That will create more capacity for the counselors who've already been seeing graduate students to be able to diversify their mix of students who they're seeing and therefore increase the amount of counseling that would be available for undergraduate students as well. And I believe it was 4 additional counseling lines that would be created. Is that accurate, Russ?
Yes, that's accurate. We're trying to match our counseling resources to areas of demand on campus. So in addition to the effects of COVID on the campus community, particularly when we had to go into periods of isolation, there's a large national trend for increasing need and demand for psychological services on campuses.
Yeah. Hi, I'm sorry, you said that's for 4 additional counselors?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
And related to that topic, Jenny Brendine with CPR put into the chat a question. She said, regarding increased money for mental health, what types of issues and concerns specifically are you seeing from staff and students?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So as I mentioned just moments ago, there is a large national trend for increased need for psychological and counseling services on campus. And particularly with respect to the impacts of COVID-19, because of social distancing and isolation, this sometimes heightens anxiety, both for faculty and staff, because we've been used to this for so many years, working together, closely socializing, and having to have made this radical change in behaviors on campus. It's a large change, and B, it's not as natural as we would like it to be. So I think this adds additional stress on students, faculty, and staff, and we're trying to make sure that we're being attended to the needs of all of our constituents.
I don't see any other hands raised right now. Is there anyone on the phone that would like to ask a question? Anyone who's not on the phone who would like to ask a question doesn't have their hand raised.
This is Katie. I have a question. If
Okay.
y'all have a sec.
Go ahead, Katie.
Do you know what the current breakdown of in-person versus remote classes is right now, and if it's going to be similar next semester?
So the current breakdown of our class modality offerings are roughly 25% fully in person, roughly 25% hybrid, which is some, a blend of both in person and remote, and then a roughly half remote offerings. We will know after November 2nd. We'll have more detail on more specifics on the fraction of class modality offerings, but we expect it to be similar to what we're doing this fall semester.
I don't see any other hands raised or any other questions in the chat. Oh, Jenny Brundin with CPR. She says, is there any sign of whether some students are leaving campus for next semester?
Yeah, we don't have specific data on that yet. Our hope is that the students will return for spring semester, but it's a little early yet to determine if there'll be atypical attrition coming back for spring semester. Historically, we always see a little bit of attrition, but again, we won't know until after students register for courses and make plans for their return in the spring.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands raised. And I don't see anything else in the chat. So going once, going twice.
I'll ask one more question. Could you talk more about the plans to improve student experience next semester?
Sure. Why don't I take a shot at that, which is that we recognized on the for the fall semester that we did a very good job, we thought, of being able to look at the physical environment on campus, to be able to make sure that the classroom environment was safe, that we had personal protective equipment. What we do recognize is that we need to improve the experience for students. And part of that is recognizing the importance of their social needs. They've gone through a difficult time in the past several week to month with having more limited social interaction under the public health orders. What we are really trying to do is figure out how we can create more meaningful experiences for them as part of the community. So Student Affairs will be working to build a weekly cadence to be able to have events where there's programming that can happen. We're working right now on coming out with guidance for intramural sports. As Chancellor DeStefano mentioned, we are going to be exploring, rather than students grabbing and go type of takeout orders from the dining facilities, how we can resume having in-person service in those facilities in groups of no more than 10 as would be permitted by the public health orders, and also trying to think about a student engagement strategy that more broadly allows them to feel like the campus is a home for them. So we think it's going to be a much better experience, and we've learned lots from this semester that would give us a launch pad to do it.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any hands raised at the moment. Anyone on the phone or anyone else that has a question right now? Okay, is there anything or any of our panelists wanted to add before we wrap up the call? No, great. Well, then I think that wraps up our availability today. So if there are other questions that come up, you can contact us at cunews@colorado.edu and we'll do our best to get back to you. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll now end the call.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.